When people ask me about 700 horsepower and what it takes to get there, I normally try and talk them out of it. Gary wouldn't listen. So 700 horsepower was the target, and we set about putting together a list of things that we needed to do to actually make that happen. The first thing was a bigger turbo. So Gary brought the car down to me in Bournemouth and gave me a long list of things to do, including tidying up the engine bay from when the engine and the car was originally done, taking off the turbo, sending it off to Owen Developments to get a new special wheel put in there that would make the power. We were convinced it would make the power if everything else was fine. It's a fantastic engine. It's a 2.35 built on an EJ22 block, so it's super strong. Should take the 700 horsepower without an issue really. Fueling might be an issue, so we put in some slightly bigger injectors. Instead of the ID 1000s, we put some ID 1300s, just to give us a bit of headroom on there. And because we've got a Syvecs control in this car, and the flexibility of the Syvecs gives us, means that we were going to put a flex fuel in there as well and tune for methanol as well, just to make sure it'll get over the 700. This wagon makes a perfect sleeper. On the outside, it is just like any other normal Subaru WRX wagon, but if you look very closely, you can see some telltale signs that something a little bit special is going on underneath the bonnet. If you like what I'm doing with the video, then please consider subscribing and obviously give it a thumbs up if you like it. So we tried to do this a couple of weeks ago, but the wastegate spring wasn't quite strong enough for us to hit the boost levels that we wanted to get to. We were aiming for 2.1 bar, but the external wastegate spring would only give us about 1.9 before it started playing up. So put another 7 psi spring in there in the middle section of the EX44 external wastegate to give us 1.5 bar of wastegate pressure. Perfectly great. And put a 4-port boost solenoid on there just to give us super smooth control of the boost. So the first job was to map it on V-power, turning the boost up to 2.1 bar. We achieved 641 horsepower. That's UK flywheel horsepower. So then it was time for the methanol tuning. I'd already plumbed in and wired in the flex fuel sensor, so it was a case of pouring in methanol into the fuel tank to a point where we're hitting the methanol percentage figures that I'm looking for in the map, just so that we set up the maximum methanol percentage that we could have, so that anywhere between 0 and 40, which is what we ended up with, it will look after itself. It will interpolate between the two tables for ignition timing, between the tables for fueling, and also for boost. So before I come on to what power it actually made, can I just say it wasn't plain sailing. The clutch decided on the first run with the methanol that it was going to slip very, very badly. So I had to turn down the boost in the methanol maps on the early part of the runs just to stop the clutch spinning up. Gary is on the lookout for a newer, uprated clutch that will handle 700 odd pounds-foot of torque. 700 horsepower is a lot. To be fair, I think it's personally too much for the road. You can get to silly miles an hour very quickly, but you know, it is fun. But getting there is very expensive, very time consuming, and can be littered with millions of unfinished projects of people that wanted to get there, but the bills keep racking up and keep racking up. Issues like the clutch slipping or the fuel pumps not being enough to supply the engine with what it needs. Luckily for us, we'd spec'd everything perfectly, apart from the clutch, which we thought would be a limiting factor. We were right. So a new clutch will be going in 2 or 3 weeks' time, so that Gary can actually enjoy this on the road, just in time for the really cold roads. So on to the results. What do we make? With the actuator pressure, it made 540 horsepower. Crazy amount for the lowest level of boost that we could run. With V-Power at 2.1 bar of boost, we made 641 horsepower. And with the flex fuel, it made 720 horsepower. So not a bad result at all. 720 horsepower. I'm sure that'll surprise quite a few cars out on the road or on track. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in another video like this very soon.